The confrontation at Carter Mansion. Felicia could feel the weight of the air shift as soon as they stepped out of the car and approached the massive gates of Carter Mansion. The towering structure before her felt like something out of a dream, but not the kind she could ever picture herself in. Ulysses, walking beside her, seemed as if he was in a different world. His steps were confident, his family's legacy swirling around him like an invisible cloak, while Felicia felt like an outsider trying to blend in. The marble pillars at the entrance, the sprawling grounds lined with perfectly trimmed hedges, and the glinting windows that reflected the grandeur of it all. It all made Felicia feel small, insignificant in a place so vast. She smoothed down the dress she had chosen carefully for this evening. Not too fancy, not too casual. She wanted to seem dignified, yet humble enough to match the atmosphere. Yet no matter how much she tried, her heart pounded in her chest, reminding her that she didn't belong in this world. As the door swung open, she was met with the quiet, cool air inside. A faint scent of lavender mingled with polished wood, the luxury of the Carter family thick in the silence. They walked in, and she immediately felt the gaze of Penelope Carter, standing tall at the end of the room, her silver blonde hair styled to perfection. Penelope's eyes locked with hers, cool and calculating, as if Felicia's every move was being scrutinized. "Ah, you must be the teacher," Penelope said, her voice smooth but sharp, slicing through the tension in the air. The words were polite, but there was a thin, invisible blade hidden behind them. "I do hope you don't find it too overwhelming here. It's not quite as simple as the world you're used to, is it?" Felicia forced a smile, but the sting of those words hit her harder than she anticipated. She had been prepared for the judgment, the coldness, but hearing it so plainly from the woman she was supposed to impress, it hurt more than she thought it would. Her gaze shifted to Ulysses, looking for reassurance, but he simply stood there, not intervening. Penelope didn't wait for an answer. She turned to Walter, Felicia's future father-in-law, who smiled warmly but didn't meet her gaze. Felicia's gut twisted as she noticed how submissive Walter was to his wife. "Come, sit," Penelope said, waving her hand toward the long dining table. "Dinner is served. It's not every day we have someone from your background join us." The slight in her tone was subtle but cutting, making Felicia's skin prickle. She wasn't sure how much more of this she could take. The room felt suffocating, the beautiful silverware and ornate china only reminding her how far removed she was from everything around her. As they sat down at the lavish table, the food, roasted lamb, creamy asparagus, fine wine, was laid out in front of them. Yet it felt like an elaborate setup, not a meal but a performance. Penelope's smile was tight, but Felicia could see the cold calculation behind it. "Tell us about your students," Penelope said, leaning in slightly, her eyes narrowing. "I'm sure you have plenty of interesting stories about them. It must be quite noble teaching young minds, but surely exhausting. I imagine the pay is less than stellar." Felicia's smile faltered as the words hung in the air. It was as if Penelope was not interested in the details of her teaching, but in seeing how she would respond to the jab. "It's not about the pay," Felicia replied, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. "It's about the impact I can make in their lives. Watching them grow, succeed, that's the real reward." Penelope let out a soft laugh, almost like a scoff. "How quaint," she said, cutting into her lamb. "I suppose for some people the emotional rewards are enough." She glanced at Walter, her lips curling into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "But I suppose you're used to that kind of life, aren't you, dear? Being content with the little things." Felicia felt the sting of the insult burn deep, but she didn't let it show. She could feel her chest tighten, but she forced herself to take a breath, to remind herself that this was just another test. Another challenge she would rise above. Ulysses finally spoke, his voice firm but gentle. "Mom, that's not fair. Felicia's work is more important than you think. The kids adore her." But his words didn't seem to carry the same weight as his mother's piercing gaze. Penelope's smile tightened, but she didn't respond to him directly. Instead, she turned her attention back to Felicia. "So, you're a teacher in the rough parts of town?" Penelope asked, as if she were collecting facts for a report. "I assume that's why you didn't pursue something more prestigious, something more fitting of your potential." The question hung in the air like a challenge, one that Felicia could feel deep in her bones. It was as if Penelope was suggesting she was somehow beneath Ulysses, beneath the life he was born into, simply because of her job and background. And the way Penelope said, "fitting," made it clear that she believed Felicia's worth didn't match up to her son's family. Felicia's eyes locked onto Penelope's, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. She had been patient, but this was too much. "I'm not here to prove my worth to you," she said softly, but the words carried power. "I'm here for Ulysses, and I would appreciate it if you could see me for who I am, not just the job I do or where I come from." Penelope's eyes flickered for a second, but she didn't back down. She looked at Felicia for a long moment, and Felicia could feel the weight of her gaze. It was almost like a test, a game to see if she would break, if she would buckle under the pressure. But she didn't. "Fine," Penelope said, a faint, icy smile playing on her lips. "We'll see if you can live up to the expectations of this family, won't we?" The words hit like a slap, but Felicia refused to show any sign of pain. She kept her composure, her dignity intact, even as the dinner continued, the tension palpable in the air. The rest of the meal passed in a blur. Every bite of food felt like a bitter reminder of the divide between her and the world she was trying to join. Penelope's glances were sharp and calculating, while Walter tried to ease the tension with small talk, but it didn't work. It never worked. When the meal finally came to an end, Felicia stood, excusing herself to go to the restroom. She needed a moment to collect herself, to breathe. As she walked down the hall, she passed a large mirror, catching her reflection. For a moment, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. She had entered this house with nothing but love for Ulysses, believing that their bond would be enough to break down the walls that had been built by his family. But as the evening unfolded, she realized just how much she had underestimated the power of those walls. And she knew now that she was going to have to fight harder than ever to earn her place in this world, to prove that her love for Ulysses was not based on money or status, but on something deeper, something real. She took a deep breath, straightened her back, and stepped out of the bathroom, ready to face the next round of this battle. This was far from over, and she wouldn't let herself be defeated.